I'm Andrea Nuetzling. I am from Syracuse, Ohio, which is in Meigs County, Ohio, down on the Ohio River.
Tell me, you talked a little bit at the podium about your service. Tell us when and where you served and kind of what you saw.
Okay. I went to basic training in August of 2000. I actually graduated basic training about a week and a half after the USS Cole bombing. And then I went to AIT at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Graduated from that 2 days after September 11th. So, and I swore then, I was like, I am not going to any more military schools because something bad always happens. But before I joined, I had a conversation with my MEPS career counselor. I was like, we're going to go to war within my first 4 years that we're in. And he was like, no, we're not having issues with anybody. I was like, I'm telling you, we're going to war first 4 years I'm in. And I called it. But, and then from there, I went to Camp Essions in South Korea, in Uijeongbu, South Korea. Then from there to Fort Gordon, Georgia. And from Fort Gordon, my active duty time was up and I became a reservist. I was with the 391st MP Battalion here in Columbus until, that was in 2004. And then June of '05, I got the call saying, hey, you're getting deployed with a unit from Michigan. So I went to Camp Bucca, Iraq, we went to Fort Dix to do our mobilization training and stuff from June to August of '05. And then in August of '05, we landed in Kuwait and went to Iraq. So, and then after all that, I got back from that and went back to the reserves here in Columbus.
If you could kind of sum it up, because I know a lot of people have a lot of history when it comes to things like this, just simply put, what drove you to serve?
It's a family tradition, basically. I have relatives that served in the Civil War on the northern side, probably in the south too, but I doubt that. I have at least 5 generations of combat veterans in my family. I'm the first female in my family to serve, but I had an uncle that was killed in Vietnam. I had my grandfather on my mom's side that served in Korea, and then my great-grandpa on my mom's side served in World War II. And they were Marines. So,
obviously, we're talking about the burn pits today.
Yes.
For those who, this might be the first time hearing about this, what do you want them to know about what these burn pits are? Why do they exist?
Okay, so the burn pits are usually pretty large. The one on Camp Bucca was probably about the size of a football field. And they would line it with all the trash from the base and light it up with jet fuel, JP8 fuel. And this is like your regular house trash, but then some. We had rubber tires, lithium-ion batteries, metal, plastic, stuff that you shouldn't burn, that should not be burned at all, being burned in this. And most of these burn pits are basically built so when the wind blows it straight onto the base. So.
Well, I'm assuming, obviously, it's not as simple as taking the trash out. You're doing this for a reason, right?
Yes.
It's a weird way to dispose of things, honestly.
Yeah, it is a weird but cheap way to dispose of things. There's bases, the British bases had used incinerators, which is the safest way to dispose of any and all trash. The reason for burning it was to basically keep things from falling into the enemy's hands.
I don't say this to make light of it, but I always try to do metaphors so people kind of understand what we're talking about here. You say the size of a football field, and this is not, again, to make light of anything, but I imagine I'm sitting next to a bonfire, the smoke blows any which way, and I'm feeling a little weird, just next to a bonfire. You've got something the size of a football field burning near where you are. The smoke maybe, it sounds like, did head your way.
Yes.
What is that experience like?
Honestly, I just was a little coffee every time when the smoke, just like normal, but a lot of my issues didn't really present themselves until after I got back and started getting back more into my running and things like that, because I was extremely active before I went to Iraq. After I got back, my activity level just started going down. I can't run anymore, and I ran cross country and track in high school. I can't do that anymore. So.
You said it was about 2005.
Yeah.
You said, so when did when you came back, sounds like you knew something was wrong. How long did it take for you to finally be able to get that diagnosis and put the pieces together?
I started having the issues, slight breathing issues, a little bit while I was still there, but it got more progressive after I got back. So it was a little immediate, but then more progressive as I got back. And then that was in 06 when I got back stateside. I didn't get my official diagnosis until, well, I had my lung biopsy in May of 2015. I got the results from that biopsy in August of 2015. And then the doctor was like, he told me all my results. He literally listed everything. I have silicone and quartz dust in my lungs. I have pulmonary fibrosis. I have interstitial lung disease. I have small airway injury. And then the big one, the constrictive bronchiolitis obliterans, which is basically irreversible, incurable, and slowly killing me. And then he goes on to say, lose weight and your breathing would be fine. And I'm just like, yeah, we're done. I was like, because there's no way losing weight will help, but when I have to take steroids, prednisone constantly, which is the biggest reason I ended up gaining weight, tell me how I'm supposed to exercise when I can barely breathe.
So 2005, 2006, when you come back, 2015 is when you get the diagnosis. How long does it then take you to get care?
Well, it took me, I filed for my lungs in April of 2011 for my respiratory conditions in 2011. And I was already rated at 80% with the VA, so I was getting fairly decent care for the most part. And then they gave me my rating for my lungs, which made it 100%. They were like, your lungs are completely messed up. We don't know what's wrong with them, but they are completely messed up. So your respiratory illness is 100%. And yes, it is service-connected. It took, like I said, it took almost 4 years of fighting them for that. And because they were trying to say, oh, it's sinus congestion and postnasal drip from Ohio weather. And I'm like, I got medical documentation from when I grew up in Ohio showing that I never had those issues before.
Did you ever think that after fighting for our country, you'd have to fight for healthcare?
Not as much as I had to. I mean, I kind of expected a little bit of a fight with the VA because, like I said, I'm military family, so I'd seen my relatives dealing with them and stuff. But I didn't think I was going to have to deal with trying to fight because of the burn pits, because of basically our generation's version of Agent Orange.
So what's happening now? And obviously, I know why you're here today speaking, but what's the current thing that you're trying to bring awareness to?
Right now, the Honor the Pact Act goes in front of Senate for their hearing and vote on it because it passed the House. And even though 174 Republicans were voting against it because it was so costly, because yes, it's a $208 billion bill, but all that money is to help educate the VA about the burn pit issues. And that's the biggest thing, because the VA's stance on the burn pits is there's no long-term health effects. And then they also want to try and say, well, these people were smokers. So I was like, I wasn't a smoker. So please tell me again how I'm not a smoker, did I get all these lung conditions and stuff? Because I worked in those pits 1 to 3 days a month. And some people's like, well, why didn't you wear your gas mask? I'm like, because that's for chemical and biological attacks, not for going and working in a pit burning things. So.
Do you find you have to deal with a lot of those misconceptions or people, saying, because it sounds like people are saying, lose weight or you're fighting for a gas mask.
Yes,
like
yes, I do.
Encountering barriers every
Yes.
time you try to explain that you have a health issue related to your service.
Yes, I deal with it a lot. Luckily, my new pulmonary doctor that I've been seeing, and then the rheumatologist that he referred me to, because the best way to describe my constrictive bronchiolitis is basically like having arthritis in your lungs. So it's always there, you have a little bit of pain, and then when it flares up, like arthritis in your joints, it flares up, you don't want to move that joint. Well, arthritis, when my lungs flare up, I can barely breathe, like at all. And so I was like, why don't we try and attack it from that standpoint, like it's arthritis? And so he sent me to the rheumatologist, and they've got me on a new medication that's non-steroidal, and it's doing a lot better job than the little taking the prednisone every month, because that wasn't keeping it from happening, while this is keeping it from flaring up.
For the viewer at home that's watching this, maybe they know somebody who's deployed, maybe they don't, maybe they're better, maybe they're not. What would you want just the average person to know about the issue that you're dealing with and having to fight for?
Whew. I wouldn't know I don't know what to say about that one.
In other words, any stranger on the street, how would you kind of explain this to them? What do you want them to take away from this?
They need to contact their census, like the Honor the Pact is going in front of the Senate. Contact their senators. Urge them to pass this, because these bills help us. Some of the bills help us as a short-term remedy, but the Honor the Pact Act helps us the best in the long term. It will put 20 plus, over 20 conditions, to include my constrictive bronchiolitis, as a presumptive. So then the burden of proving that it was because of the burn pits, is no longer on us. The VA has to say, yes, this is why you're sick, so yes, we are service connecting you.
Is there anything else you'd want, because I know you talked a lot about on the podium too, so is there anything I didn't ask you, anything else that you want our viewers to know about what you've been going through?
Not that I can think of. I mean, my daughter grew up dealing with this, and when my lungs flare up, she gets anxiety like crazy because of it, because she's worried that I'm not going to get to the emergency room and get the oxygen that I need in time. So, but I mean, it's not just on us, it's on our family members too. Like, it stresses them, so.
This is, obviously you're receiving treatment, but this is still an issue every day for you, sounds like.
Yes, I have to fight every day to make sure I'm not exposed to anything that could actually make my lungs flare up, because those are not fun at all when they flare up.